The Legend of Jigong, Chapter 28.
Our entry point is the famous monk, Jigong, and he's strolling up to the county yamen, which is, the local government headquarters in Yuhang County. He's traveling with two companions, Sulu and Fengshen.
Right, and they're just relaxed, right?
They've just grabbed a bite at a restaurant, they're feeling good, and they are looking for a man named Guotai to share a drink with. It is the absolute definition of mundane. And then the screaming starts.
The contrast the author employs here is just incredibly deliberate. I mean, the text lulls you into this false sense of security with this everyday occurrence, dining, resting, planning a social visit, and then within a single paragraph, it plunges you into an absolute nightmare.
Because the yamen functioned less like a modern courthouse and more like a localized feudal stronghold, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you were dragged inside, you weren't awaiting a jury trial with a defense attorney,
You were subject to the immediate physical whims of the local magistrate.
Right. And the text even notes that Jigong, who is this powerful, famous, almost mythical monk in the lore, he visibly shudders when he hears those shouts.
Which is saying something.
It really is.
Yeah.
That shudder is the text's way of establishing the stakes. If a figure possessing his spiritual and practical fortitude is physically reacting with horror to the sound of those leg crushers, the stakes for a mortal man like Guotai are just unfathomably high.
It's essentially a death sentence preceded by pure agony.
Exactly.
Which forces us to ask the single question that drives everything we're going to explore today. How does a man go from the streets of Yuhang to the interrogation room of the yamen in a matter of hours?
It's a wild trajectory.
To answer that, the text violently throws us backward in time. We leave Jigong standing at the door, and we enter a flashback that meticulously details Guotai's day.
And what a day it is.
Right. Today, we aren't just reading a classic story. We are going to dissect the psychological breaking point of a man who has lost everything, the fascinating social dynamics of poverty and wealth, and how a single day can swing wildly between salvation and absolute doom.
What's fascinating here is how this single excerpt serves as a microcosm for the human experience,
Yeah.
We're going to explore the text to understand not just what happens to these characters, but why they make the desperate choices they do.
So let's start with Section 1, the anatomy of despair. We really have to start with the total psychological collapse of Guotai.
We do. When the flashback begins, we find him walking down from Chenghuang Hill. And, well, he's a man who has been entirely stripped of his societal safety net.
Right. He realizes he has absolutely no relatives, no friends to rely on, nowhere to live.
Nothing. He is carrying exactly 200 Wen basic copper coins, which he uses to buy a boat ride to Yuhang and a minimal amount of food.
Let's isolate that number for a second. 200 Wen. In the context of the historical economy we're looking at, what does it actually mean to be down to your last 200 copper coins?
It means you have transitioned from poverty into an active state of dying.
Wow.
I mean, in a pre-welfare society, money isn't just commerce. It is your literal right to exist for another 24 hours.
So it's basically a ticking clock.
Exactly. 200 Wen might buy you a meager meal and a short passage, but it leaves absolutely nothing for the next day. By spending this, Gao has intentionally brought himself to a state of absolute zero.
He's basically looked at his ledger and decided there will be no tomorrow.
Right. And the text gives us a deep look into the specific flavor of his despair, Gao isn't just hungry. He's a man of immense ambition and pride.
He's a scholar.
Yes, a scholar who firmly refuses to beg. He feels he has completely failed his role as a man. The ultimate goal of a scholar in this societal framework was to pass the civil service examinations, become an official, serve society, and elevate his family.
And Gao has failed to serve.
He's failed completely. He can't even feed his wife, who is currently stashed away in a nunnery in Linen, simply because he cannot afford a roof over her head.
The psychological burden of I guess you'd call it the failed patriarch. It's the engine of his despair here.
Oh, totally. The historical Chinese civil service system was an incredibly brutal meritocracy. Families would invest decades of resources into a single male heir, right?
Yeah.
Exempting him from physical labor so he could just memorize the Confucian classics.
So his entire identity, his worth as a human being, was inextricably linked to his ability to convert that education into bureaucratic power.
And financial stability, yeah.
Yeah.
By failing, Gao doesn't just feel broke, he feels structurally useless.
His internal monologue is devastating. He literally thinks, I am born into this world in vain.
Heartbreaking.
It reminds me of like a hyper-specialized academic today who suddenly finds their entire field of study rendered obsolete and they are completely unemployable in a blue-collar economy.
That's a great comparison.
Only here, the shame is amplified 1,000 times by the cultural weight of filial piety and familial duty. And as he is standing there carrying this immense shame, contemplating his total lack of friends, he recites a proverb to himself.
Yeah, and it is one of the most vivid, cynical summations of poverty in classical literature.
Let's hear it.
He says, poor in a busy market with steel hooks, you can't hook close relatives. Rich in deep mountains with wooden clubs, you can't beat away unrighteous friends.
The imagery there is just vicious. Poor in a busy market with steel hooks.
It really is.
It suggests that even if you are physically surrounded by thousands of people, and even if you had literal steel grappling hooks to forcefully drag your own blood relatives toward you, your poverty acts as an absolute repellent.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this proverb perfectly encapsulates the social isolation of poverty. Gao isn't just physically hungry, he is socially dead.
Is Gao just being cynical here, or is this a universal truth about how society treats the destitute? I mean, think about how isolating a sudden financial crisis feels today. That's exactly what Gao is experiencing.
The core takeaway here is that poverty in this era wasn't merely viewed as a lack of resources, It was viewed as a total loss of utility.
Right, because it's a hyper-transactional society.
Exactly. If you have nothing to trade, no influence, no capital, no favors, you cease to exist socially. It is the profound difference between being just broke and being completely erased.
The busy market part implies that opportunity and human connection are physically right in front of him, but his financial status creates this invisible, impenetrable barrier.
And the back half of the proverb is the exact mirror image. Rich in deep mountains with wooden clubs, you can't beat away unrighteous friends.
Meaning wealth creates a gravitational pull so immense that even physical isolation and violent deterrence cannot stop people from flocking to you.
Which forces a really uncomfortable realization. I mean, Gao is viewing the world through the dark, distorted lens of his own depression, certainly, but the text validates his cynicism.
It proves him right.
Yeah. Relationships in this societal framework were often built on mutual benefit. When you drop out of the economic ecosystem, you are quietly pushed out of the social ecosystem.
I wonder, though, if Gao uses this extreme cynicism as a kind of armor.
How so?
Think about it. If society is fundamentally corrupt and purely transactional, then his failure isn't really his fault. It's easier to believe the entire world is morally bankrupt than to face the sheer terror that you individually have been abandoned by the people you love.
That's a really sharp observation.
It rationalizes the horrific choice he makes next. He looks at the boats in the city moat outside the South Gate. He declares this his destined place to die, and he leans over the water to drown himself.
He is attempting to take control of the only thing he feels he has left, which is the timing of his own exit.
But right at the precipice, a voice stops him, and the narrative violently shifts gears. A stranger pulls Gao back from the brink, and the author pauses everything to give us a highly specific, striking physical description of this new character.
The introduction of Wang Chengbi.
Yes, the text lists his attributes like a video game stat sheet. He is 7 feet tall, he has a narrow waist and a broad back. He is wearing a blue hat, blue clothes, and a hero's cloak. He has a purplish-red face.
Very striking.
And then there's this poetic description of his balanced facial features. 3 mountains match, 5 sacred peaks are even. And he's in his 20s.
We really need to decode that description.
Yeah.
Because in classic Chinese literature, physical appearance is never just decorative, it is destiny.
Okay, let's break that down.
The phrase, 3 mountains match, 5 sacred peaks are even, refers to traditional Chinese physiognomy, which is the practice of reading a person's character and fate through their facial structure.
Oh, wow. So what are the 5 sacred peaks?
They refer to the forehead, chin, nose, and the 2 cheekbones. Having them even or balanced signifies a person of immense integrity, straightforwardness, and formidable destiny.
So he is the archetypal martial hero.
Exactly.
And the contrast the text builds here is almost cinematic. Here's where it gets really interesting. You have Guotai, the classic, frail, weeping, depressed intellectual who can barely stand up under the weight of his own philosophy,
Right.
being rescued by this towering, physically dominant, pragmatic action movie hero figure.
They represent two entirely different cosmologies colliding. Wang introduces himself as a local cargo manager, a longban working at the riverbank.
So he organizes labor.
Yes. His entire existence is organizing grueling physical labor to unload massive cargo boats. He lives in the realm of sweat, commerce, logistics, and immediate physical reality.
Whereas Gao lives in the realm of abstract ideals, societal expectations, and intellectual pride.
Exactly. And Wang's pragmatism cuts right through Gao's philosophical despair. He doesn't offer Gao a shoulder to cry on. He buys Gao a full meal with wine, addressing the immediate biological failure of the man, and bluntly tells Gao that suicide is idiotic.
His argument isn't spiritual at all. He just says the dead cannot be reborn. It's pure logic. You cannot solve a problem if you remove yourself from the board.
Wang believes in survival at absolutely all costs. To Wang, dignity is a luxury you can only afford if you have a pulse. To Gao, a pulse is worthless without dignity.
Which makes Wang's proposed solution so fascinating because it is wildly offensive to Gao's worldview. Wang says, I don't have cash to hand you right now, but you can work. You can pull the boat tracker's ropes for a day.
For a scholar in the Ming or Qing dynasty societal structure, this proposition is akin to asking a modern brain surgeon to clean out a sewer with their bare hands.
It's that extreme.
It is a complete and public inversion of the social hierarchy. Scholars cultivate their minds, right? Laborers sell their bodies. For Gao to pull a tracking rope, the Qian is to publicly strip himself of the very class identity he has sacrificed his entire life to build.
Gao's reaction is exactly what you'd expect. He protests instantly. I have not enough strength to tie up a chicken. How can I pull ropes?
Yeah, he's totally appalled.
And here is where Wang proves he is not just a brute. He possesses immense emotional intelligence. He realizes he cannot bully a scholar into doing manual labor. He has to basically hack the scholar's own operating system.
Wang weaponizes philosophy. He looks at this desperate scholar and quotes a variation of classical thought. He says, a gentleman's stature can be great or small. A true man's ambition can bend and stretch.
It's brilliant. He leverages Gao's own intellectual background to convince him to do manual labor. He uses the framework of Confucian flexibility, the idea that a superior man adapts to his circumstances without losing his core virtue, to convince Gao to drag a cargo boat through the mud.
He essentially gives Gao a philosophical permission slip to survive.
I love that phrasing.
But he pairs it with a crucial, practical promise. Wang says, do this for one day. When my own payment comes in from a job, I will give you the funds to retrieve your wife from the nunnery, and I will use my connections to find you a teaching job.
So he gives him a timeline.
Right. He doesn't say, you are a river laborer now. He says, endure this humiliation for 12 hours, and I will fund your restoration.
It's the bridge back to his identity. So Gao agrees to this radical, temporary lifestyle shift. And this leads us to what has to be the most tragically funny, absurdly vivid scene in the entire narrative, the scholar on the riverbank.
It is the moment where Gao's internal psychological warfare becomes completely externalized.
Let's set the scene. Wang gets Gao onto a massive cargo boat. The professional boatmen only agree to let Gao join the crew because Wang, their respected manager, vouches for him. But the reality of the job hits Gao instantly. As he warned, he possesses absolutely zero physical strength. He doesn't even know how to properly hold the tracking rope.
We should really clarify what pulling a tracking rope entails.
Right.
Because before motorized engines, heavily laden cargo boats had to be physically dragged against the current or through shallow canals by teams of men walking along the muddy riverbank.
It sounds awful.
It was. They wore harnesses attached to massive, thick ropes. It was agonizing, brutal work that just destroyed the spine and the shoulders, and it required immense synchronization. If one man stumbled, the tension on the rope could snap back and severely injure the others.
So to maintain that synchronization, the professional laborers chanted traditional work shanties, guttural, rhythmic songs designed to keep everyone stepping and pulling at the exact same microsecond.
Right, it's functional music.
But Gao Gao cannot chant a work shanty. He physically and mentally cannot bring himself to participate in the culture of the labor. So as he is straining against this rope, literally covered in mud, he copes by reciting aloud from the classic Confucian text, The Doctrine of the Mean, specifically chapter 13.
And the specific passage he yells out is incredibly telling. He's yelling, a gentleman acts according to his current station, whether in poverty, wealth, barbarism, or sorrow, a gentleman finds himself at ease in all situations.
Okay, I am struggling with this visual. It's like someone reciting Shakespeare while trying to survive a brutal CrossFit class. You have a line of hardened, calloused laborers dragging a boat, and in the middle of them is this frail scholar shouting ancient philosophy about finding inner peace.
Absurd, yeah.
To a modern ear, this doesn't sound like a noble defense mechanism. It sounds incredibly arrogant, deeply out of touch, and almost mocking of the men around him. Are we supposed to sympathize with Gao here, or is the text openly mocking the uselessness of the scholar class?
Well, this raises an important question. Why is he quoting philosophy while dragging a boat? It's a brilliant duality, and the text invites both readings.
Okay.
On a socio-political level, yes, the author is absolutely poking fun at the rigid, impractical nature of the scholarly elite. Gao looks utterly ridiculous.
Oh.
But on a psychological level, it is a profound defense mechanism. He is stripping away his physical dignity, but violently holding on to his intellectual identity.
So he's using the text as a shield.
Exactly. He is experiencing ultimate physical humiliation. By shouting the doctrine of the mean, he is violently erecting an invisible wall between himself and the mud. He is basically broadcasting to the universe, my body is tied to this rope, but my mind resides in the Imperial Academy. This labor does not define my soul.
That makes a lot of sense. He's preventing his ego from collapsing into the dirt. And how do the other workers react to this guy shouting philosophy in the middle of a grueling hall? The text says they burst out laughing at him.
But notice the quality of the laughter. It isn't malicious. They don't unclip him from the harness and beat him up or anything. It's the laughter of pure bewilderment. They are observing an alien creature.
Right. It highlights the immense, almost insurmountable gulf between the working class and the scholarly class in the society. They don't even possess a shared vocabulary for suffering.
No, they don't.
Yet, despite the absurdity, despite the physical agony, Gao actually pushes through. He works until he is utterly bone-tired, exhausted. He sleeps on the boat at a place called Yunjiadu, and the very next day, he pulls the boat all the way back to Yuhang.
He survives the crucible. He didn't jump into the moat. He allowed his pride to bend, and he completed the labor.
And the universe seemingly rewards him for this massive personal growth. When Gao returns to the docks, Wang Chengbi, true to his word, is waiting for him. Wang announces that his own business dealings have succeeded. He has received a payment of 35 strings of cash. And without a second of hesitation, Wang hands the money over to Gao.
This is a staggering act of generosity. It really reinforces Wang's archetypal role as the noble hero. He didn't just give Gao a job. He gave Gao his own profit to ensure Gao's restoration.
Wang gives Gao specific instructions. He tells him to take the heavy strings of cash into the city, exchange them for silver, which is, much easier to carry and universally accepted, and then buy wine and meat so they can celebrate all night.
A solid plan.
The plan is set. Tomorrow, Gao will take this silver, which amounts to 50 taels, and fetch his family. So let's contextualize 50 taels of silver.
In this era, that is not pocket change. It is a highly significant amount of capital. It is enough to pay off debts, rent a home, and comfortably sustain a family for a considerable period while Gao searches for a teaching position.
So it's life-changing.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Gao has successfully navigated the trial. He has moved from suicidal isolation to possessing real capital, securing a powerful friend, and formulating an actionable plan for his future.
So Gao survives the physical ordeal and actually secures the silver. He has the capital to escape this life. But having money in an urban center in this era, especially for a naive scholar, introduces a completely new threat matrix.
A threat he is entirely unequipped to perceive.
Right. Let's move to Section 4, the peak of hope and the cruelty of fate. Gao goes into the city. He successfully exchanges the cash for the silver. He buys the supplies. Everything is going perfectly.
The tension is building here.
Oh, yeah. He is rushing out of the city gates, trying to get back to the riverbank to celebrate with Wang. It's right at closing time. The sun is setting. There's a dense crowd, a sense of urgency as people try to get in or out before the heavy gates are locked for the night. And as he is rushing, a stranger sprints directly toward him.
There you go.
The stranger is acting frantic, panting, looking over his shoulder, and he crashes directly, physically into Gao.
This is where the mechanics of the street intersect with the vulnerability of the scholar.
The stranger doesn't get aggressive. He doesn't threaten Gao. Instead, he apologizes profusely. He bows deeply to Gao, says he is terribly sorry. He's just in a massive rush. And then he quickly hurries away into the crowd. And Gao, operating entirely on his conditioning as a refined man, a gentleman scholar, forgives him immediately. He thinks it was just a clumsy accident. Think nothing of it.
And that politeness is the trap.
Moments later, Gao reaches into his robes to check his money, and the 50 taels of silver are completely gone.
The devastating daylight robbery.
We need to break down the mechanics of this scam, because it is surgically precise. The thief didn't use a knife. So what does this all mean? The thief actually used Gao's own polite, gentlemanly nature against him.
Exactly. This is the classic bump and lift. In a dense urban environment, thieves rely on misdirection and social conditioning. If Gao were a hardened river laborer like the men he just worked with, his immediate reaction to a physical collision would be defensive.
Right, he'd push him away.
He would likely grab the man, check his own pockets instantly, or shout a warning. But Gao has been trained for decades in Confucian propriety. When someone apologizes and bows, the socially mandated response is to accept the apology and maintain social harmony.
Wow.
The thief knows this. He profiles Gao, likely identifying him by his scholarly robes and naive demeanor, and exploits that exact cultural programming.
So his refinement is the very thing that makes him a victim. The pacing of the text here is just brutal. I mean, it spends all this time building Gao up. It forces him through the agonizing physical labor. It rewards him with a genuine friend in Wang. It hands him the silver. It gives him total salvation, only to strip it entirely away in a fraction of a second through a mundane street interaction.
It is a complete structural demolition of hope.
And what fascinates me most is Gao's reaction, because if I just lost my family's entire future to a pickpocket, I would be screaming for the city guards. I would be tearing through the crowd looking for the guy. I would be completely consumed by rage at the thief. But Gao doesn't do that.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't even try to look for the man. He immediately blames the cosmos.
His reaction is terrifyingly fatalistic, and it reveals a deep-seated philosophical worldview.
He stands there in the street, having lost everything again, and he quotes another dark proverb. He says, "The king of hell destined me to die at the third watch. Who dares keep me till the fifth?"
We have to unpack the theology and the timekeeping in that proverb. The traditional Chinese night was divided into 5 watches, roughly 2 hours each.
Okay.
The third watch is midnight, the dead of night. The 5th watch is right before dawn. The king of hell refers to Yanluo Wang, the ultimate bureaucratic authority of the underworld, who maintains the ledgers of life and death.
So Gao is saying that his death was literally pre-scheduled in the underworld ledgers for midnight. And if the ultimate authority has scheduled your death, no human intervention, no matter how strong or well-intentioned, can delay it until dawn.
Precisely. This proverb reveals a complete collapse of his belief in earthly justice or personal agency. Gao believes the universe is actively trying to correct a clerical error.
A clerical error.
Yes, he believes he was supposed to die yesterday in the moat, and Wang Chengdi's intervention was merely an unnatural delay of the inevitable.
Not only that, but consider how this absolves him of the responsibility of fighting back. He strips the thief of any agency. The thief isn't a malicious criminal. The thief is just a chaotic tool deployed by the king of hell to restore the cosmic ledger.
Right.
It almost sounds like Gao wanted to be robbed to validate his own miserable worldview. It confirms his bias that he is cursed.
That is a fascinating read, a sort of self-fulfilling fatalism.
Yeah.
It is far easier for Gao to accept that he is the victim of an omnipotent underworld bureaucracy than to accept that he was simply outsmarted by a petty street thief. The former makes his failure grand and cosmic, while the latter makes it pathetic.
And because he believes this so entirely, he doesn't go back to tell Wang Chengbi what happened. He doesn't ask for help. He turns around, walks out of the city, and goes right back to the exact same spot at the moat to jump in. We are right back where we started 24 hours ago, but the despair is infinitely deeper now because the universe introduced hope specifically to violently remove it.
The introduction of hope made the subsequent fall lethal. He is now convinced that fighting for his life is not just difficult, it is a literal offense against the cosmic order.
The narrative cycle is complete. The universe seems determined to kill Gao. He leans over the water for the second time. But just as he prepares to plunge into the moat, another ghost from his past materializes.
The narrative intervenes again, right at the precipice.
Moving into Section 5. Karma and the return on investment. A man physically grabs Gao and wrenches him back from the water. The man's name is Li Siming. Now, Gao is in a state of absolute shock and doesn't recognize this man at all. But Li frantically, joyously explains their shared history. And this history provides a massive thematic counterweight to everything we've just discussed.
It introduces the concept of long-term karmic investment.
Li explains that years ago, when he was a desperately poor young man, he lived next door to Gao's family. This was during the era when Gao's family still possessed their wealth and status. And the Gao family was highly charitable. They supported Li. But the crucial detail is this. When Li's mother died, and Li was completely destitute and could not afford a burial, Gao's family paid for the funeral.
I want to isolate that detail because it completely changes how we read this interaction.
Yeah.
In the context of traditional Chinese society, paying for a parent's funeral is not just a nice favor, it is an act of immense, almost sacred charity.
Because of filial piety?
Yes. Filial piety, the duty of a child to their parents, is the absolute cornerstone of societal morality. By funding the funeral, the Gao family allowed Li to fulfill his utmost filial duty. They didn't just give him money, they saved his moral soul. It creates a life-altering, multi-generational debt of gratitude.
And the charity didn't even stop there. After the funeral, Gao's family used their influence to secure Li an apprenticeship at the Tiancheng rice shop. They gave him a career path. And Li took that opportunity and ran with it. He didn't waste the chance. The text notes that Li was incredibly hardworking. The shop owner loved him so much that he married Li to his daughter and eventually handed the entire massive business in Qingjiang over to him. Li became an incredibly wealthy, self-made merchant.
Look at the contrasting trajectories the text establishes here.
Yeah.
We have two men. Gao started at the absolute top of the social hierarchy, wealthy, educated, charitable, destined for bureaucracy, and has spiraled down into suicidal poverty.
Yeah.
Li started at the absolute bottom, a desperately poor neighbor who couldn't even bury his own mother, and has climbed to the top of the merchant class through relentless hard work and a fortuitous marriage.
I'd actually push that a step further. It's not just a contrast of wealth, it's a contrast of class mobility. The scholar is immobile when his singular path fails, but the merchant is adaptable, and now their paths cross again. Li explains that he had returned to Yuhang specifically to find his benefactor, to find Gao. But when he asked around the city, he heard the terrible rumors that Gao's family had fallen into ruin and vanished. Li was so fiercely determined to find him that he actually bought a house at the West Gate and a grain shop at the South Gate. He established a permanent commercial and physical presence in the city, purely in the hopes that one day Gao would turn up.
That level of dedication is staggering. It serves as a profound philosophical counter-argument to the dark fatalism Gao was expressing just moments before.
Exactly. Let's talk about the thematic reversal here, because earlier in this deep dive, Gao was quoting that cynical proverb about the steel hooks in the busy market, insisting that being poor means you are erased, that you have absolutely no friends and no connections.
Yeah.
But here, in this exact moment, his past generosity is literally the physical thing pulling him back from the edge of the ledge.
It completely shatters the cynical proverb. The text is making a complex argument about what actually saves a person. What's fascinating here is the text's view on merit and karma. Well, Gao's intellectualism, his quoting of the doctrine of the mean, couldn't save him from the reality of poverty. Even Wang Chengbi's sheer physical willpower and intense pragmatic intervention ultimately failed to protect Gao from the bad luck of the street robbery. What actually saves Gao in the end is his own past kindness.
It's his karmic trump card.
Yes. It is a long-term moral investment finally maturing at the exact microsecond he needs it most. The text suggests that while the king of hell might dictate fate, and while the streets might be full of thieves, human compassion creates a resilient network of obligation that can counteract even the darkest destiny.
The emotional whiplash for the reader is intense. You have this beautiful, tearful reunion. The suicidal despair is washed away by this miraculous realization that Gao is not alone, that his past actions meant something profound, and that he has a wealthy, eternally loyal friend ready to catch him. Li and Gao agree to walk together to Li's newly purchased home to sit down, talk, and presumably fix Gao's life permanently. The reader finally breathes a sigh of relief. The roller coaster has pulled into the station.
So the author wants you to believe.
Right. Which brings us to section 6, the cliffhanger. Because the text refuses to let the pendulum rest in a positive position. It has one final vicious trap to spring.
The structural rug pull.
Yes. Li and Gao are walking away from the riverbank. They are talking, reconnecting, feeling the warmth of salvation. They haven't walked very far at all. And then Gao trips over a random object lying in the dirt on the street. He reaches down, picks it up to see what it is, and the text abruptly ends the chapter.
A literal cliffhanger.
The narrator cuts in with this agonizing, omniscient tease. Small men harbor hatred and falsely harm good citizens. If you want to know what happens next, listen to the next chapter.